Here we go. So, all right, let's start. So, a little bit different to normal. Like in other years, we've sort of done the same thing because this is the last year before the break. So the next one probably will be Parshas Kiseitze, I think, just because people are away and whatever. It's during the height of August. That's the first full week in Elul, I think. I think Shoftim is Rosh Chodesh that Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think. Anyway, anyway, whatever. So that's Mishnah. So therefore, what we will do is focus on more general things based around the beginning psukim of Devarim, but ideas that are the thematic about Devarim, Sefer Devarim as a whole. Because Sefer Devarim is very important to understand. It's not easy to understand, and therefore that's why it's important to spend time on it. So let me just find the one what I wanted to start with. Is a Ksava Kabbalah. The Ksava Kabbalah says as follows. He says, you should know, Ki chameshes psukim horishonim heim hakdoma shel kol hasefer. You want to understand the introduction to the Sefer is based on the first 5 psukim. That's what we're going to mainly focus on in this share. And he says that 3 times you have the speech of Moshe, the dibur of Moshe, emphasized in these psukim. Eila hadvorim, right? Asher dibur Moshe al kol Yisrael, right? That's once, and then you have again. It says in Pasuk Gimel, Diber Moshe el bnei Yisrael. Moshe spoke to bnei Yisrael, and then you have again a slightly different phrase, but also a very important word which we'll come back to. Hayom Moshe be'er. Moshe began to explain this Torah. So Torah is Osleimah, and he says the reason why. Each of these 3 sections relate to and correspond to the 3 different themes of Sefer Devarim, the 3 different sections of Sefer Devarim. Sefer Devarim and lots and of Rishonim and Achronim all discuss this, and they each have their slightly different approaches to this. The themes of Sefer Devarim and particularly how the Sefer is divided, right? Is divided, and he says there are 3 parts to the Sefer. The first one is from the beginning of the Sefer up till the Vayikra, which is before the Aseret HaDibros. That's in Boaz Chanan. That's in Perek Hay. So he says up to Perek Hay in Parshas Boaz Chanan. That is one section. That's the first section, which is the beginning, I think, of it's the beginning of Perek Hay. So it's just after, I think it's just after Kisoled Bonim. Yeah. Just after Kisoled Bonim, you have that unusual parsha of Moshe Rabbeinu setting aside the Ori Mikvah, a lot of discussion about why that's there and everything else. And then you have Vayikra Moshe b'kol Yisrael v'yom alayim Shema Yisrael Sachukim es Moshe, which is really the introduction to the Aseret HaDibros, right? That's so up to there is the first section. The second section is, and that first section is basically Musa. That's what it is. It's Musa. It's ethical instruction. It's telling them how they went wrong and how they should behave, right? The second one is from that word Vayikra right up to the brachos and klolos in Parshas Kisovo, right? So that's how he learns. Others just learn it, understand it a different way. He learns that that's really the bulk of the Sefer from that word Vayikra, which begins the introduction to the Aseret HaDibros, all the way through to the brachos and klolos at the beginning of Parshas Kisovo. So after the parsha of the Kurim and Vidui Maisa, after that, right up to there, that is the second part. And that is talking about mitzvahs, and that is mitzvahs, okay? And that's why he says, if you look at what it says there in Parshas Kisovo, one second, at the beginning of, he learns this into the Pesukim very beautifully. One second, where is it? He says that there you see that it says Eileho Eidus v'Achukim, right? These are the Eidus and the Chukim which Moshe Rabbeinu commanded to the Bnei Yisrael, okay? And that's how you learn. This is talking about Eidus and Chukim. These are talking about all the mitzvahs, etc., etc. It's repeated, I think, a few times there. And what exactly? Which specific pasuk is referring to, but whatever it is, that is what he says. That's how he understands it. That this is talking all entirely about it's focused on the mitzvahs. And the third one he says is from the brachos and klolos, from the brachas and klalos, which is there in Parshas Kisavai, all the way to the end. That's the third section. That is the third section. So, so what you have is, that's right. What you have is these three clear sections. What is the third section about? That third section is, and it talks about there. It says before the brachas and klalos, the curses, the blessings and curses. There in Parshas Kisavai is ba'er heitev. It should be explained clearly, and then it says Vayidaber Moshe. So, right? It talks about ba'er heitev again. There's this clarification, and he says if you look carefully, you understand that the three psukim that he mentioned at the beginning in the first five psukim, which have the words, right? Asher diber Moshe b'nei Yisrael, and Hoyel Moshe be'er. Those three psukim, right, correspond to, they start in the same way as the three svarim of Shmos, Vayikra, and Bamidbar. You notice that? Right? Eila Shmos b'nei Yisrael is like Eila Hadvarim, okay? Vayikra, right? Vayikra, it says, at the beginning of Vayikra is, it says, what does it say? It says Vayikra Moshe el bnei Vayikra Hashem el Moshe. So therefore, you have as well. You have the same phrase, and the word Vayidaber as well is also those two words Eila Vayikra and Vayidaber, which are the three words which introduce each of these three sections of Devarim. So it's not the words at the beginning of Psukim; it's the words at the beginning of each section in the Sefer, right? So for Eschanan, you have the Eila Hoedus, you have the one here Eila Hadvarim, and then you have it says Vayikra Moshe with the second section, and the third section it says Vayidaber Moshe, and that's Vayidaber is Bamidbar. Okay, and what is the point? He says that this is the way. This is how they each correspond to each other. So the first one is Eila. He doesn't really explain all three of them. He just explains the middle one, which is Vayikra. Vayikra is full of mitzvahs, and Vayikra is one thing. Vayikra is full of mitzvahs, and because Vayikra is full of mitzvahs, that's why the parsha which begins the middle section of Devarim begins with Vayikra, because it corresponds to it. It's also talking about mitzvahs, and the other two correspond to the other two. He doesn't explain exactly how, but perhaps we can say like this: Shmos is Eila Shmos b'nei Yisrael, right? Haboim Mitzraymo. Why does Shmos correspond to the first section, which is Musa, which is ethical instruction? Because Moshe Rabbeinu is telling them, recall what transpired, understand what happened, the reason why you left Mitzrayim, the values you're supposed to hold dear, what went wrong, what you didn't do correctly. And that's the first section that's really focused on that, on the Shmos story, if you like. You could link it in that way. And the final section, Vayidaber, which begins with the word Vayidaber, which corresponds to Bamidbar, which also begins with the word Vayidaber, makes sense, because that's the conclusion of the journey. Sefer Bamidbar is the primary journey through the Midbar, and that journey is concluded with the end of Sefer Devarim, right? That journey can end of Sefer Devarim. So according to Ksava Kabbalah, we have a very clear structure. We have the first section, which is Musa, which corresponds to Sefer Shmos. Perhaps we can understand, revisiting the values that the people were supposed to internalize. The middle section is corresponding to Sefer Vayikra, which is full of mitzvahs, like Sefer Devarim is full of mitzvahs as well, that whole middle section. And the third one is the conclusion of the story, really the conclusion of Bamidbar, if you like, in that way. That's the Ksava Kabbalah. The Toras Chaim makes a few very significant points here at the beginning, which if you've got Mekuras Gedolos, you'll be able to see inside. I'm just going to put out a few details, a few highlights from what he says. Toras Chaim says that it's the third paragraph, the beginning of the Toras Chaim on Posuk Aleph, the very beginning. He says, the purpose of the Eila Hadvarim, what does the Torah want with this? These are the things. The whole time he didn't speak to them harshly. The only time he speaks to them harshly is really here. And even though we see Shimuna Hamorim, so we do find he speaks to them harshly, especially rebellious ones, he didn't say that to all of Klal Yisrael, just to some of them, those who were rebelling, those who were behaving inappropriately. Okay, and so he brings the Zohar that says that. Eila Hadvarim, this is the only time he spoke harshly to everyone, the words of rebuke here. And that's why it says, El Kol Yisrael. to all of the Klal Yisrael. Pirush al kulamu shalidiba kosher elaina. In other words, even though there was some sections he spoke harshly to before, this was the only time close to when he passed away that he gathered them all together to give these harsh lessons that they needed to understand, they needed to internalize. Again, skip a few more paragraphs, and he says, what is the idea? V'romaz oid be'omroi al kol Yisrael. There's another hint through the fact that it says al kol Yisrael. Pirush, this means to say, lo Yisrael shreinim tzoim nigdim shom b'darahu levado yodva. Kol Yisrael means everyone. It doesn't just mean those who are there. It means future generations as well. The messages here are for the future generations as well. Because Moshe Rabbeinu placed the Torah in these incredibly lofty words. And all of Christ will have to fulfill what's written in these words. He says there are no words that are equal to these words. And that's what it means, Eila Hadvarim. Eila Hadvarim means there's nothing comparable to these words, right? These words are so significant, they're so lofty, they're so important, there's nothing that can compare to that. One final point from Toras Chaim. In my edition, it's the next page. I don't know if that's the same with everyone. It's on the words El Kol Yisrael. Is it the same? Top of the next page, yeah? Tam Omer El Kol Yisrael. Why does it say to all of Klal Yisrael? He says because there's two ideas in Moshe's speech. Number one, so it's different in a way, so he splits into two. These are really two themes. Number one, to repeat the Torah, in other words, to go over what they needed to hear, the Mishnah Torah. Number two, base to rebuke them on that which they had already done. Each of these things had to be to all of them. Kol Yisrael couldn't be to part of them. Le'inyan chazara satorah, right? In order going over the Torah, there had to be, right? What was the reason, right? Why did he need to go over everything? Mishum shechosh, right? What was the purpose? Mishum shechosh, he was concerned that Eza Odom Yisrael sheshachach Eza mitzvah Hashem. Maybe someone's forgotten. Maybe one of the mitzvahs someone hasn't remembered. It's impossible to identify who has made the mistake. And what the mistake is. How can you identify one person amongst all of Klal Yisrael that's forgotten one thing, and you don't know who the person is and what they've forgotten? That's why I gathered them all together and repeated the Torah. Okay, so everyone would get, right, what they were missing. They would make it. They would be able to obtain it. To be able to hear it. Also with regards to the rebuke. If he rebukes a few of them, someone's going to complain. Others are going to complain. Why are you singling us out? And therefore, that's why, says Toras Chaim, has to say Kol Yisrael, because both of these elements had to be to all of them. They all had to hear the Tochacha, because otherwise someone would say, well, why me and not him and everything else? And they also had to all hear the repetition, the Mishnah Torah element, because the main aim of that was to make sure it was solid with them and know they hadn't forgotten something. So you had to cover everyone to make sure. That's Toras Chaim. So you begin to see here, which others point out the same idea as well, that a central concern of Moshe Rabbeinu is to ensure that there is no, that really nothing is forgotten, right? So nothing is forgotten. That there is nothing that Moshe Rabbeinu knows that his time is limited, and therefore he wants to ensure that as much the potential and possibility for doubt is removed. Okay, we'll really go on to that now. There's a Malbim which we've done in the past. We did 2 years ago. So we're not going to go. We don't need to go over it. Although it was a beautiful, beautiful piece. I'll just remind you very briefly. The Malbim at the beginning of the Sefer has this incredible idea that if you notice, and it's such a marvelous thing to pick up on. He says if you look carefully at Sefer Devarim, one of the unique aspects of Sefer Devarim is the use of the word Yisrael as opposed to Bnei Yisrael. All the way through the Torah, always the Bnei Yisrael, right? right? You know what I mean? Bnei Yisrael. You look up Sefer Devarim, you notice it. If you know, once you've heard it, you can't miss it. It's again and again and again Yisrael without the Bnei, right? Even right at the beginning, right? El Kol Yisrael, even Shema Yisrael, right? Shema Yisrael. Then it's repeated a few times. Shema Yisrael, right? It's from Chanan. It's in yes, I think it's in Akev. It's in what's it called? It's in certainly with the Milchama and the Shofar. If you say it's in a Shema Yisrael, some creating Milchama. Yeah, it's multiple times the word Yisrael. And why is it that what is unique about Sefer Devarim that the word Yisrael they address with the word Yisrael, not Bnei Yisrael? So the Malbim says that that when it comes to that when it comes to the idea is the difference is like this. He says the Yisrael means the whole nation, like as if they're all one, ke'ish echad, like one person. That's Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael means the children of Israel, as in the individuals within that nation. The Bnei Yisrael. That's the difference, right? Yisrael is like they are one entity, one people. The Bnei Yisrael are the individuals in that nation. He says, Tzivui Hashem, the command of Hashem, as in the first four, if you like, was in each individual from the nation singled out. And that's always Daber al Bnei Yisrael. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, speak to the Bnei Yisrael. That every individual person amongst the nation should hear this idea, should hear this mitzvah, whatever. But the Teichacha of Moshe Rabbeinu was deliberately to the klal. It was specifically to the klal. It wasn't singling out individuals, which links to what Toras Chaim says, right? It wasn't singling out individuals. It was to everyone. That was the point as a whole. And that's why it says, Asher Dibur Moshe El Kol Yisrael. El Kol Yisrael. So why now? The question is, why is it that at the beginning, in these 5 psukim, it does say Bnei Yisrael? Right? This is a beautiful piece of the Bible. It's worth repeating. In Pasuk Gimel, Dibur Moshe, Vayibar Moshe al Shtei Chodesh, Ve'echol Chodesh, Dibur Moshe El Bnei Yisrael. We just said that Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to the Yisrael. Why Bnei Yisrael here? Says the Malbim, because the Torah is telling us that this was Hashem's direct command to Moshe Rabbeinu to speak these things. As a command from Hashem, and to write them down, right? Just like the rest of the Torah. The way the Malbim explains it at greater length is that there were various times when Moshe Rabbeinu had rebuked them, not just here, right? Various times that had taken place, but he wasn't allowed to write them down. He had to rebuke them. Midas atzmoi, from his own opinion, they needed a rebuking, whatever. And those that wasn't written down, right? That's what the Malbim says. Now, in the 40th year, which is where they were, right? Okay. Now Moshe Rabbeinu is told, write them down. Hashem commands him to write them down. Okay. And therefore that's why now the instruction is given, Dibur Moshe El Bnei Yisrael, because it was the Dvar Hashem. It was the instruction of Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu to write down the Teichacha. Are you with me? And therefore that's why it says Bnei Yisrael to emphasize that that effectively that it's completely, it's all of it is al pi Hashem, and that there isn't that distinction. The whole Torah chasumah nitna, the whole Torah is obviously Dvar Hashem, and that's the emphasis of this Bnei Yisrael here. It links it in that way. It links it in that way to the rest of the Torah. Now, the second piece of the Malbim, which is what I wanted to mainly focus on in this piece, is he talks about what is the Hoyel Moshe Pasuk Hey Be'er Satorah Azos. So he says that is the second part of the Torah, which is from Parsha Perek Yud Beis. He understands the second part is from Perek Yud Beis and onwards. Perek Yud Beis and onwards. Right, that's what he says. Parsha Yud Beis and onwards, and he says that this is, I think, which I think he's using as referring to this is how he's splitting it up in terms of the mitzvahs. Obir Adova, he says. The implication is, we hold on Rabbi Akiva, all the mitzvahs are given with their generalities and specificities. Too many instances. Yeah, specificities. No, specific. Anyway, whatever. Right? Well,
Specifications.
Could say specifics. Yeah, I was thinking of a better. I was looking for something a bit more. You know what I mean? Ah, that was it. Specificity. No. What? You had it, Jeremy. Don't worry. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, you said it once. It's fine. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah. Anyway, he says, Rak, Shemoshe, Alav Shalom, Omru Teil, Omru Teichev. He didn't say immediately. Rak called Parsha Nemra B'Shaita. Every Parsha was set at its time. When Hashem told him to speak to Israel. Sheparshas Rabbis Nemra B'Har Many Parshas said at Har Sinai. Shmona Parshas Nemra B'Yom Shechua Mishkan. We know the 8 Parshas were said when the Mishkan was set up. And Rosh Chodesh Nisan. V'chein Nemra Ma'at Mat Kolachas B'Shaita. Other Parshas Nemra B'Arvis Moab. We know they were said at different times up to when they got to Arvis Moab, to the plains of Moab now. Now this, he says that when Moshe was alive, there were more mitzvahs. They would teach it sort of in his heart. They were there, they were within him, and he would find the right moment would come when he would reveal it. Everything was taught Moshe on Har Sinai, right? So the mitzvahs were all there, ready to be said or revealed at the right time, when he was meant to give them over. He was going to depart the world. Nothing else can be introduced now. No Novi can introduce anything new after Moshe Rabbeinu was nifta. And therefore, he had to conceal the Torah b'limudah, had to completely seal it. And therefore, that is why he is now told to make sure that everything is clear. And that's why it says, Hoyel Moshe be'eres haTorah. To explain it, to clarify it. There can be nothing else. Time is running out. There can't be anything else. There's no more time to wait on anything that is there, that was given to him in Har Sinai, for it not to be revealed in all its clarity. He says you find in Tanakh the word Be'er 3 times. That's what he says, yeah? Twice it comes after the word Kesiva, writing. It says in I think it's in Kisov. It's called the right? You shall write on the stones. The stones they put up in the yard in a section afterwards, right? Ba'er Heitev. You shall write out the Torah clear. Ba'er Heitev. And then there's a pasuk in Chabakuk. Kasov Chazon, write the vision. Obe'er, and clarify it, explain it. Ala luchos, on the tablets. Shapirish aksiviti muvueres maversh the whole keri. That's what it means. It means that the writing should be clear and clarified, right? So that Leman Yoretz Koribos, it's clear to everyone. That's the idea. And therefore here it means the same thing. He's using those 2 other instances where the word Be'er appears in the context of writing, right? That it's written down on stones. Here's what it means, the same thing. The idea is to clarify it and make sure that it's crystal clear to everyone. And it should not be any more sealed in the heart of the shliach, in Tal Moshe Rabbeinu, to give the Torah when he felt it was the right time to do so. Now it has to be Torah shlema, clarity, complete for everyone, and so that it's completely given over in every respect. There's nothing held back. Now the Sforno in this pasuk says another similar idea. Look at the Sforno if you've got Mikros Gedolos. And the same word, what does it mean, be'er, to clarify? The says the Sforno, they're not wandering around anymore. That was the final encampment. And with this, after he'd already entreated Moshe Rabbeinu and he pleaded to be able to cross the Yarden with them, and he knew that was not going to happen, what did he do? He began to explain wherever he felt there might be some doubt about afterwards, it wouldn't be clear after he died. And that's why it begins with the words, again, he refers you to Perek Hey, where you'll see that's the beginning of this clarity, of this clarified explanation, right? Where it begins, the introduction to the Aseres HaDibros. So you understand what I'm saying? There's a link here between the Malbim and the Sforno. They're both picking up on this point or that Moshe Rabbeinu's focus is time, that there's very limited time, and that everything has to be given over, and everything has to be clear, or as clear as possible. So the Malbim focuses on the fact that beforehand, Moshe Rabbeinu is giving it over at different times, he's holding certain things back for the right moment. Now it's all being given. And that's what's happening in Sefer Devarim, all the mitzvahs and everything else. And the Sforno says there is a need for clarity, ba'er, to clarify things, so that to minimize the sfeikus, so that afterwards people won't be able, they won't be able to have that same clarity. And it says the Sforno beautifully, that's why he introduces it with Musa, with rebuke. Look at the next Sforno. Before he goes into the, clarifying the mitzvahs, removing all the doubts, Omali Yisrael, he says to the Bnei Yisrael, you know why I have to do this? There's only one reason I've got to do this. There's only one reason you're going to have to hear a huge amount of detail, because you're going to go into Eretz Yisrael without me. You understand? Because you're going to go without me. That's why you need to hear all this. I can't tell you what to do. Really, Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like you to come into Eretz Yisrael, and as everything happens, I'll explain it to you. When you have your first battle, I'll tell you how to wage war. When you all the things that Sefer Devarim, we know is a lot of focus on mitzvahs which apply in Eretz Yisrael, not only, but there's a lot of focus on mitzvahs. I would like to tell you that when it happens, like everything else, the way that we've done things on the journey, but it's not possible, and I won't be able to clarify all the doubts you have. And therefore he tells them, look how you messed up. Because they're bad choices they made and the sins they committed. So that they should be careful about this in the future, not to destroy the chances they have, and not to ruin themselves, right? That's the focus of Moshe Rabbeinu. So this one is very beautiful. There's a different approach to Sefer Devarim. It's like the introduction is the introduction as to why the rest of it exists. If you're confused, right, by, for example, a Parshas Kisei, like Parshas Kiseitze, mitzvah, one after the other, related, so many mitzvahs. So according to the Sforno, that's why you need the introduction of Sefer Devarim to help explain that to you. You want to understand why there's such a huge amount of mitzvahs and how it works and why they're all coming together in this way and they're, bunched together. We need the beginning of Sefer Devarim to understand that's the rebuke. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I have to do this. And I'm going to go into great length and explain why I have to do it. It's because I can't come with you. And that's because of the choices you made.
So the rebuke is largely to do with Chet HaMeraglim, because that's why they were there 40 years.
Fits exactly. It fits beautifully, with Parshas Devarim, where he goes through in detail the Chet HaMeraglim. Exactly. Absolutely. And it also, I think, helps explain, although, how you link it all together, but in Parshas Eikev, you also have at great length, the repetition of the Egel Hazov, the Chet HaEgel, and everything is linked to that, because the Egel Hazov comes back of Yom Pokti or Fokadati, that was the beginning, problem, if you like, with the Egel Hazov. So that's also links in beautifully to that. There is a Rambam, just a final point. This Sforno links to a Rambam in Pirush HaMishnayos. The Rambam says in Pirush HaMishnayos that Moshe Rabbeinu gathers them together in Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and he said to them, "Higiyas on Moshe, this time has arrived to pass away. V'im yesh bochem, and if there's amongst you misha shama halacha v'shalcha, someone heard something, a halacha, and he forgot it, Yovav Yishaleni. Now is the time. Come to me and I'll explain it. And I'll clarify it. It was according to the Rambam, when Moshe Rabbeinu says, when the Torah says in Pasuk Hey, Moshe Rabbeinu began to explain it was an invitation. It was an invitation to come forward. If there's something you're not sure about, you better ask now. If you're going to have to ask now. And he says, and that's how it is, and that's what the Chachomim brings in the Sifri, that anyone who forgot halacha would come and learn it, and whatever it needed to be explained had to be explained, and therefore they understood through that, and they learned the halachas and the pirushim all that time from Rosh Chodesh Shvat until the 7th of Adar, till Moshe Rabbeinu passes away. That is the focus of Sefer Devarim. the sense of urgency and the need to clarify things. So hopefully these ideas have been useful and beneficial. Wish you all a very good Shabbos. Say we'll resume later on. Now, okay. Have a good Shabbos.